This is the Daily Tech News for Monday, June 2nd. We're into June 2025. We tell you what you need to know, follow up on context, and help each other understand.
Today, Samsung may knock Gemini back in favor of Perplexity.
Oh, that's intriguing. I'm Tom Merritt.
And I'm Robb Dunewood.
Let's start with what you need to know with the big story. Yeah, Bloomberg sources say that Samsung is near to a deal that would integrate Perplexity's generative models into Samsung phones. Supposedly, the deal might preload the Perplexity app on your phone. That seems obvious. It would preload the Perplexity Assistant into Samsung phones. Maybe slightly less obvious. Integrate Perplexity search into the Samsung web browser. Now, that's intriguing as it treads on Google territory. And integrate Perplexity into Samsung's Bixby virtual assistant, which I think everybody expected Gemini to do. This would all be tied in with Samsung investing in Perplexity in its next round of funding. More wide-ranging discussions include the possibility of Perplexity and Samsung teaming up on a new version of an operating system that would have agents that could use not only Perplexity, but also other assistants. I'm guessing that's just a modification of Android because Samsung does that, but that is in the also being discussed stuff, not the would be in the initial deal stuff, but intriguing as well. Details have not been finalized, according to Bloomberg, but if they do reach a deal, the idea would be to announce it later this year and then launch Perplexity as at least the default assistant on the Galaxy S26 in 2026. Now, this would not remove Gemini from Samsung devices. It has done similar things in the past where it prefers its own service over Google, but keeps the Google version around. But it would make it an alternative. And this is similar to how Apple has been planning to offer access to multiple models, including a rumor that they are also in talks with Perplexity. It also would have the effect of deflecting some monopolization accusations from Google. Whether that's by design or just as a side effect, I don't know, but it would be Google would be able to say, hey, look, Samsung isn't even using us as the default anymore. Rob, are we actually headed to a norm of multiple models available on the major operating systems?
I think so, because and this is a huge deal to me. I am a user of Samsung Galaxy devices. In fact, I have the latest flagship of their devices, the Galaxy S25 Ultra, and right now it's all about Gemini. So for them to clearly shift from Google to Perplexity is a big deal. I know here in the United States, where a lot of our listeners are, it's all about the iPhone. There's a lot of iPhone users here, but Samsung sells a crap load of phones all over Earth. And this is potentially a humongous deal for Perplexity if this goes through.
Yeah, I feel like Perplexity, not that they were in trouble, but they, sort of had their big buzzy moment and have been looking for that next act. And this certainly could be the next act, especially if in quick succession they're able to have a deal with Samsung and then maybe have a deal with Apple later this year as well. We got WWDC coming up next week. Who knows? Maybe there's a surprise announcement coming out of that. Haven't heard too much buzz around that lately, but you never know. This is a big deal for Perplexity. It's a big deal for Samsung in that they're kind of in the same position as Apple now, where they aren't making the models. They are working deals to provide the models and choose from them.
It seems like that makes sense because if you're an AI company, that's all you do. You can put all your focus on that. Samsung does a lot of things. They make a lot of stuff, refrigerators, freezers. They do a little bit of everything. So it seems like they could maybe go with Perplexity, we are just focused on making the best AI models possible. And maybe we are moving into that realm to where you just pick the one that you like to use. Now, I would imagine that sophisticated users probably will do that. If you like using ChatGPT, that's what you'll go with. If you like using Perplexity or Gemini or whatever the case is, that's what you'll go with. But there is also the default. And there's an awful lot of users that whatever the default thing that they double press a button and something just happens, that is now what they use. And so, as I said earlier, Perplexity is in a really good spot if this goes through the way that we think it might.
Yeah. And, it's worth pointing out that Perplexity uses OpenAI models. It's not like Perplexity is using its own models. It's kind of, making a cocktail of models here. I know right now, because of ChatGPT and because of the prominence of OpenAI and Sam Altman and all of that, that we tend to talk about AI companies and AI platforms, but we may be headed to a world where these are just technologies, much like chips, where, we don't talk so much about Intel and AMD and ARM being, a problem for Apple and Google and Microsoft to use. It's more like, oh, there's competition amongst the makers of the parts that go into this other thing. And it's interesting to see which ones are chosen by the makers of the machines. Maybe we're headed to a world where that's AI. Most people don't even know what's under the hood unless you're into it like we are.
It very well could be. But like I said, there is a thing that when you buy a phone, you just tend to use what the phone comes pre-installed, even though you can install something else. This puts Perplexity in a prime spot if you're going to get on a lot of mid-tier to higher-end Samsung phones that are sold in mass across Earth. That is a good spot for Perplexity to be in.
Yeah, and Perplexity is not going to care if down the road you're choosing Perplexity, or if it's just like, oh, I pressed the button, as long as Perplexity gets that cash from Samsung for the deal, that's all they care.
Money spends the same as far as they're concerned.
Yep.
DTNS is made possible by you, the listener, thanks to Johnny Hernandez, High Tech Okie, Chris Zaragoza, and our new patron, Sled.
Or SLED. I don't know. Let us know for sure, but very much appreciate you having you along. There's more we need to know today. Let's get to the briefs.
Among the many announcements and releases at Google I/O last week was an Android app called Google AI Edge Gallery. There's also an iOS version coming out soon as well. The app lets you find, download, and run locally a range of models through Hugging Face. That includes Google's own Gemma 3 and others. And it means that you can do things like generate images, write code, and ask questions without needing an internet connection, since everything happens on your phone's local processor. The app isn't alpha, so you need to get it from GitHub and load it yourself. It's released under the Apache 2.0 license.
Yeah, this is a really interesting, almost old school Google just being an engineer kind of release. It's through GitHub, so it's not like it's going to be massively used unless someday they put it in the Play Store or in the App Store. But a lot of people are going to try this out, myself included. I would like to try it out, because the idea of being able to do image generation, ask those sensitive questions where you're like, I'm not sure I want them knowing this, and having it stored in the cloud, having that option where you're like, not only being told, yeah, we'll do this one locally, but you're in control. You can turn off that Wi-Fi. You chose the model. You don't even have to choose a Google model, although they would like you to choose a Google model. I think this is something that I know a niche of our audience is really going to want to try.
I'm going to try it too. I generally keep a older phone that's probably a year, 18 months beyond it coming out. So it's still pretty high end and powerful. So I want to load this up and just see what it can do on my phone without having to push stuff into the cloud. I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and worth noting, a partnership with Hugging Face on this, like you using Hugging Face, which I think a lot of people might in their heads think like, oh, those two are butting heads, but not always. Another advance in the world of brain-computer interfaces, this one from a company called Paradromics. The company announced that on May 14th at the University of Michigan, it successfully implanted its interface into the brain of a patient undergoing surgery to treat epilepsy. So patient gave consent for this. They were already undergoing surgery, so this was not invasive for the point of putting in the interface. They were just kind of piggybacking on the fact that they were already going in there. The device was able to successfully record neural activity. It was removed after about 20 minutes. So the patient did not consent for it to stay there. Said, you can put it in, you can record some data, but then take it out. The demonstration allowed the company to get approval. Well, should allow the company to get approval for clinical trials, which are expected to start later this year, so they can test long-term safety and use. So they can actually put it in there and leave it in there. Paradromics BCI is called the Connexus brain-computer interface. It can record activity from individual neurons and is meant to help patients with severe motor impairments be able to speak through a computer. So it can measure neural activity and then translate it and turn it into speech. University of Michigan is now able to use this device for research as long as there's no significant risk to patients. Paradromics, of course, not the first to do BCIs. They follow Synchron, Neuralink, and Precision Neuroscience, who have also successfully implanted systems in people, which to me sounds like we're saying this is common now, Rob.
This is a cool story for multiple reasons. Number one, the first one is that we're just going to tag along on the surgery that you're already having and stick this device in for 20 minutes or so, and let's see what data we get back. The fact that we are there, we could do that we literally are going to implant something into somebody's brain for a few minutes, get data back that's going to ultimately help us get better at implanting stuff into people's brain is a cool thing. So I applaud the people who are signing up and allowing this, to basically be the guinea pigs for this. But what comes from it, if they are right and they figure this stuff out, it's pretty impressive because folks have things that are very debilitating. And if you can actually, communicate more effectively because of something that was implanted in, during a surgery, that might significantly improve the quality of your life.
Yeah, there's all kinds of medical and non-medical uses that are going to become normal once this becomes normal. I'm not trying to put a number of years on how long it is before this becomes normal. That's a game I used to play with autonomous cars and to varying levels of accuracy. But it's always good to see us making progress with this.
Let's just go with sometime in the future.
Yeah. Sometime before I die, probably. I'll put that one out.
Nintendo has sent out a warning to those lucky enough to get a Switch 2 this week that they should not remove the protective film on the screen. In its health and safety guidelines, Nintendo writes, quote, "The screen is covered with a film layer designed to prevent fragments scattering in the event of damage. Do not peel it off," end quote. Switch 2 begins shipping Thursday, June 5th. So my gut tells me that if you crack this screen and you don't have that thing on there, shards just go everywhere.
Yeah.
So they're trying to save people's toes and fingers and stuff like that.
Exactly. I mean, I guess you can take it off, but you're at your own risk of getting cut. So it seems like it's meant to be on there. Maybe just leave it on there. Bloomberg reports that Universal Music Group, Warner Music Group, and Sony Music Entertainment, so the big three, are in talks with music generators Udio and Suno to license music. Udio and Suno, if you don't know, both offer the ability to generate a song from a text prompt, but they do try to stop you from directly copying the styles or songs of actual artists. So if you put something like, make a song like Taylor Swift, it'll say, yeah, I can't do that. However, that hasn't stopped the labels from suing both of these companies for copyright infringement, in part based on their training data, not just what they are capable of doing. However, an agreement would end those lawsuits, give royalties to the musical artists, and possibly let you use a major artist's name or song in your prompts. I was so inspired, Rob, that I wrote a little song.
We found a way to share. Music's a bridge we dare. Playbooks and AI unite. Creative on inside. Together can make a sound so bright.
I mean, isn't that beautiful?
If you're looking for a second career, you might be able to go onto like one of the smaller cruise lines and one of the small lounges and actually perform your AI generated
I just have
music.
to have my iPad next to me to play the AI music, lip sync to it. Yeah. Imagine though, if I could have said, make that in the style of someone, I could have made it even more impressive.
I wonder what the law is going to look like, because I imagine there's going to be some artists who want nothing to do with this. I do not want my likeness being used at all. So I wonder what things are going to look like in a year and 2 years and 3 years.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because Obviously, if you're on one of these big labels and they make an agreement, then it's up to you to negotiate with your managers at that label about what is allowed to be used and what isn't. And I'm sure that'll be part of these licensing agreements. But for independent artists, are Udio and Suno going to offer similar terms? Say, hey, we made these licensing agreements with the big labels. We'll offer the same level of control to you as well. That would be a good move. I'd be interested to see if that comes out of this as well.
The government of the UK ran a trial with 20,000 civil servants using Microsoft Copilot to help with everyday tasks like drafting documents, summarizing emails, and updating records and reports. The Department of Science, Innovation, and Technology found employees saved an average of 26 minutes a day. Examples including speeding up how staff handle routine customer queries and personalizing advice for job seekers at the Department for Work and Pensions.
26 minutes a day. That's not bad.
That's 2 weeks a year. That's 2 full weeks a year. So, for one person, doesn't sound like a whole lot, but if you've got hundreds or thousands of people that work for you, that's a heck of a lot of productivity that you're eking out.
Yeah. And it means that people who need help from these agencies and these government departments get their help faster too, because of this. So I like this story because there's a lot of like, well, will it actually increase productivity? Will it not increase productivity? And this actually put it to the test and said, okay, let's try it. Let's measure it and see what it does. And it's not the crazy predictions that sometimes you hear, but 26 minutes isn't nothing, like you said. Nikkei reports that SoftBank and Intel have developed a joint venture called SAI Memory, S-A-I Memory, to develop stacked DRAM that matches the performance of current high bandwidth memory, but you're like, okay, so it matches it. What's the big deal? Uses less than half the power. So not only would this be a significant saver of power in places like data centers, where that has become a big concern, but it's also a return to the memory industry by Intel, which, if you recall, ended development of its Optane memory products back in 2022.
At TwitchCon Europe on Saturday, Twitch announced that you'll be able to stream games in portrait mode, making it easier to watch gameplay on phones. Creators can choose to stream both formats at once if they wish to. Also, support for 1440p streams is rolling out in open beta to partners and affiliates. Additionally, Twitch will launch a rewind feature with a small number of viewers this summer.
Few court cases to update for you. I know sometimes tech news just feels like it's all court cases, but these are some updates so that you know where things are when other people aren't paying attention. That remedy hearing for Google's search advertising antitrust case. This is the one about search placement. This is the one where the Department of Justice in the United States said, maybe you should make them get rid of Chrome. Maybe you should make them not have exclusive agreements anymore. That one, it's the older of the two antitrust cases against Google in the US. That one closed arguments on Friday, and the judge is now considering them. The judge indicated he might favor softer remedies in his closing questions. So things like limited data sharing, only ending payments to Google for search placement if other measures don't increase competition. He made a lot of acknowledgement about how much things have changed in the 10 years that this case has been pursued. Judge Mehta plans to issue his decision by August. We ain't getting it soon. I keep telling everybody, like, this is far from over. It's going to take a long time, because whatever he decides in August, Google says it's going to appeal the original decision that it violated antitrust rules. That appeal is likely to get taken up. We don't know if they'll succeed or not, but it's likely to turn into another court case. So we'll get the remedy, and then Google will appeal, and this will go on before any decision ends up being made. Also, Apple is challenging a European Union order from back in March that told Apple to make its OS more interoperable. This is the one that said you need to give it access to headphones, to VR headsets, let notifications show up on other people's watches and wearables, even some apps. Apple says granting that kind of access would risk user privacy.
Tom, I don't know if we're a particularly litigious people or if these companies are just always line stepping. They just step in the line so close that they have no choice but to be sued. But there's a lot going on here.
Yeah,
it's continuing saga.
You look back on at least U.S. Antitrust history, and it's always when a company gets so big that people complain enough, then the antitrust comes. But the antitrust moves so slow that by the time the remedy gets made, it almost doesn't matter anymore.
It really doesn't. And finally, a few calendar events for you. Jeff Keighley's Summer Game Fest begins Friday, June 6th at 5 p.m. Eastern. If you can't make it to the YouTube Theater in Inglewood, California to see it in person, you can watch the stream on YouTube or Twitch. And Apple's WWDC is to take place starting on Monday, June 9th, with the keynote kicking things off at 1 p.m. Eastern. Expect a later DTNS start that day to accommodate all the announcements.
Oh, yeah, WWDC. Lot swirling around. Also, a lot of people starting to say, I wonder if I'll be disappointed, especially when it comes to Apple Intelligence. You can join in the conversation on that. And in fact, we often chat about these things while they're happening in our Discord, which you can join by linking to a Patreon account at patreon.com/DTNS.
We end every episode of DTNS with some shared wisdom. Today, Anand Jr. has some further thoughts on the e-tattoo for your face that we talked about on Friday's show.
Yeah, he writes, I wonder if this is harder because the better points for monitoring are in the hair. Not a problem for guys like me with a more aerodynamic hairstyle, but I don't see people shaving to be told if they're stressed or not. But I also wonder if this gets enough information for home sleep studies, cutting down on a trip to the hospital.
So no, Tom, that this is a audio show, but you're looking at my face right now. How do I feel? With all this facial hair that I have on my face.
Yeah, you feel like maybe you don't want that under your hair. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, yes, it would be easier than going into the hospital for a sleep study, but I wonder how many people will go, you mean I have to wear that on my face for a week? I know they're talking about making it transparent. We talked about that on Friday, but yeah, a lot of people may decide, you know what, I'll just sleep in the hospital for a little bit. That's fine.
Yeah, all advancements are not necessarily great advancements. So yeah, I would rather just let me go do the sleep study. What are you thinking about? Got some insights into a story? Share it with us at feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com.
Yeah, big thanks to Anand Jr. for contributing to today's show. Thank you for being along for the Daily Tech News Show as well. It is made possible by you, our patrons. We thank you so much. Patreon.com/DTNS. See you tomorrow.